Here is what we are covering today. We'll map these crucial updates straight to your syllabus, hitting GS Papers 1, 2, and 3. And then we are going really hard on the data for GS Paper 5.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, GS Paper 1, Culture and Heritage.
So when we talk about Assam's history, we usually hyper-focus on the decisive Ahom victory at Itakali back in 1682. But honestly, what happened after the dust settled is what truly matters for your cultural assimilation answers. If the examiner asks about this, you absolutely must cite how Swargadeo Rudrasingha integrated Golpar's Nawab families right into the Ahom administration. He actually invited a Nawab family from Golpara, gave them equivalent land grants, and provided the facilities for them to settle in Aboypur.
Now write this down, please. This was not just some temporary transactional political alliance. We are talking about 300 years of seamless assimilation in language, in agricultural practices, and in customs that fundamentally shaped our society. These Nawab families became deeply integrated. They weathered major political upheavals and made lasting contributions. Guys, this is the exact kind of concrete historical evidence you need to drop in your mains papers to prove the composite syncretic nature of Assamese culture.
Staying on GS1 for a moment, let's look at the documentary, The Kamyang Story. It focuses on the critically endangered Kamyang language down in Pawemuk village. Now, Kamyang is one of the 6 Thai languages that arrived in Assam centuries ago. The source material highlights an 84-year-old man, Bogeshwar Tamang, and here's the reality check. He is believed to be the absolute last person who can fluently read, write, and speak Kamyang. Just think about that. When he speaks, a language survives, but when he falls silent, its future is literally erased.
And that brings us to this incredibly powerful insight, perfect for your essays. Nobody needs to ban the mother tongue. Neglect is a far more elegant and silent executioner. Wow. You see, linguistic heritage doesn't usually vanish because of some sudden dramatic state ban. It disappears through gradual domestic and administrative neglect. It happens when kids answer their grandparents in a totally different language, or when schools and offices only incentivize the dominant languages. Definitely use this profound observation when you're discussing the preservation of indigenous languages.
Moving on to Section 2, let's look at GS Paper 2, Maternal Health. Okay, check out this number. Under the Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan, a staggering 835 high-risk pregnancies were identified in Morrigan district alone. This flagship initiative actually just completed its 10-year milestone, and this figure, it represents the massive, on-the-ground impact of targeted government healthcare camps. Identifying 835 high-risk cases means we are actively preventing potential maternal or neonatal tragedies long before they can even happen.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the policy actually functions at the grassroots level. You've got to use this specific program's impact in your answers to show how free antenatal care, or ANC, directly promotes safe motherhood. Out of those 835 cases we just talked about, 402 women got on-the-spot medical management and counseling, and 433 were referred for advanced specialist treatment. They even provided free ultrasound services to ensure accurate risk assessments. The takeaway here? When you write about GS2 health interventions, don't just list out the schemes. Tell the examiner exactly what services were delivered and what outcomes were achieved.
All right, Section 3. Let's shift gears to GS Paper 3, Economy and Environment.
Aspirants' PPP model is a golden keyword for you. Now, we all know about PPP, right? But adding that fourth P for people changes the game entirely. It's a public-private people partnership. The Assam EU Blue Valley Cluster uses this exact framework to build a bioeconomic value chain. Basically, this initiative aims to establish Assam as a massive hub for fragrances, flavors, and wellness products. And how? By connecting local botanical resources, farmers, women-led self-help groups, and tribal communities straight to global markets and investors. It is the absolute perfect case study to demonstrate how economic development can be structurally tied directly to social empowerment.
Also under GS3, take a look at Margarita's brilliant integration of sustainable waste management with rural livelihood generation. Under the Swachh Bharat mission, they didn't just go out and hire some massive corporate contractor. No, they empowered local self-help groups, specifically the Hopun VO and Sika SHG, and hooked them up with eco-friendly e-rickshaws for door-to-door solid waste collection. You absolutely must use this as a prime case study for decentralized, community-led environmental sustainability.
Finally, Section 4. Let's tackle GS Paper 5 and the rural-urban divide. The recent editorial titled Alarming Disparity reveals a truly staggering reality. Assam's rural infant mortality rate, or IMR, is sitting at 31 per 1,000 live births, compared to just 14 in urban areas. This is actually the highest IMR gap between rural and urban areas in the entire country. Listen, when you're writing an essay on social infrastructure or rural development, making a sweeping statement like rural areas have worse healthcare is only going to earn you average marks. But citing that the rural IMR is more than double the urban IMR? That is exactly what earns you the marks of a future administrator.
Now, this data perfectly highlights just how heavily skewed our healthcare infrastructure is toward urban centers. Look at institutional births. They lag in rural areas at 86.9% compared to 95.4% in urban zones. What about access to skilled health personnel? It's only 90.2% in rural belts versus almost 96% in the cities. Even the total fertility rate shows this prominent geographic divide. And just look at the C-section rates, a massive 46.7% in urban hospitals versus a mere 20.7% in rural facilities. This clearly points to a severe lack of postmaternal, neonatal, and critical care units out in our rural community centers.
And the tragic real-world consequence of this sparse rural infrastructure is that villagers are practically coerced into financial ruin just to seek basic medical treatment in urban enclaves. Because private players tend to avoid the rural sector for commercial reasons, and our rural health posts are under-resourced with heavily skewed logistics, the burden falls entirely on the poorest citizens. They are forced to travel long distances, paying entirely out of pocket, which inevitably pushes them into a devastating cycle of debt.
You know, these aren't just exam topics to be memorized and then immediately forgotten. These are the real-world, flesh-and-blood challenges that you are fighting to solve. Today, you've got the historical context of cultural assimilation, the grassroots reality of linguistic neglect, those innovative PPP models, and the hard, undeniable data of the rural-urban healthcare divide. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought for your interview prep and your future careers. You have the data, you see the divide. As tomorrow's administrators, how are you going to bridge it?